Hey, I guess everybody got excited and then that was it.
Hey Patrick, how are you?
Good. You doing all right? Oh, can you hear me now? I'm sorry. Yeah, good. Have myself muted.
Yes, you can hear.
I just thought I'd squeeze in one more night this week. Give myself a reason to be a little more productive today.
Thank you for that.
So I don't think I'll get through all this tonight. If I had to squeeze all this information I put together in an hour, it'd be like I'd be a micro machine man in it. Because when I break apart the task list from EAS and I bring in the stuff that I've done, it's like, oh my gosh. Then I did a content quiz over E and I didn't do very well. Like, oh my, how do I not? But it's always those one or two word phrases. But I appreciate y'all coming, making me feel smart. Yeah, we'll probably end up going as well. We'll just see how far we can go. Like I said, it's a lot of stuff when you really start peeling apart E, because it has a lot of tricky concepts. We'll wait a little bit longer, see if we can get more. Figured we'd have more people. I know they'd set an event up. Check that. Oh. First, it doesn't matter if we have two people or one person or how many. I just wanted to briefly go over some of this. Few more minutes, get some more people, and then we'll get going. This is just, I know it's kind of an impromptu, it wasn't really an event, but I still want to record to post it to the channel so the content's available, depending on how far we get. And then we'll just see what I do on Monday. I'm not sure yet. Not really sure. If you don't want your video on, that's fine. If you want to change your name, that's fine too. I understand. we'll kind of get rolling a little bit because it's a lot of stuff. And like I said earlier, if we don't get through all of it, I may continue tomorrow, maybe in the morning for me. And if I catch some people, that's great. If I don't, that's fine too. Or maybe afternoon. It's whatever. I just don't want to do it in the evening. And I want to get some pool time in. Well, I don't know. Get the pool time in. I'm kind of having some pool issues. My in-laws have a pool, so makes summer nice. It really does. All right. Well, let me get rolling a little bit. Just to give you guys heads up, like I would any other evening. There's information taken from the BAS Supervisor Guide. It's a big reason why I don't share and post the presentation. But in all honesty, I also post slides from my other book studies. There's Cooper stuff in there, and there's a little bit of BALC in there, Behavior Analysis for Lasting Change. And I may have been stuck in a presentation that someone covered for me on stimulus change. I wanted to cite them, but I just couldn't remember who it was. There's a few slides in there. So definitely a little bit of various resources. A lot of topics in E, you can go super deep on like one and spend a good evening just on one of those topics. So obviously doing, E for under an hour, that might be a little tough, especially depending on how deep I go in those topics. Or if we have any questions or concerns or worries, please feel free to drop in and say something. That's totally fine. I know D and J get a lot of attention because the amount of questions on the task list for the test, but E has some stuff that leads into some stuff, some important stuff too. Can't even think straight right now, to be honest. I'm trying to fight I'm hanging in there, but it's been tough. EO1 talks about interventions based on manipulation of antecedents such as MOs and discriminative stimuli. So I could easily follow the trail that behavior analysis for lasting change went, or I could look at this as MOs and discriminative stimuli. There's also that stimulus control aspect to it. So there's a lot of rabbit holes in EO1 that this could chase. And there's a lot of content just right there alone, just on the MO and then the SDs and so forth. So I try to just kind of do a little bit of everything. So I'm not going super deep, but I have a little bit of the information. Get this thing out of the way here. BAS Supervisor Guide states that remember that SD are cues. I think I tell everyone, teachers, parents, everyone I come in contact with, they're cues. They're cues that tell us that reinforcement is available, and sometimes it's not available. That would be your SDE for extinction. Sometimes you have an SDP that signals punishment. But whereas motivating operations have to do with the magnitude of desire rather than availability. Today would be a great example of that. There's a meal that I only eat in the town down the road. Haven't been that town, at least by myself, for a while. Haven't had a reason to go there since I've been working over there. So I had the desire, and I definitely had the deprivation. I can't even talk tonight. Deprivation. So I had that going on. So there was that MO right there. And then, of course, then I had my SD that it was open was my cue that reinforcement was available, or even the city town sign would be available. But of course, it being open would be really the SD for reinforcement. But anything that comes, I can't talk to them. Sorry, guys. Anything that becomes to what comes next becomes an SD. Anything that affects the power or the magnitude of the reinforcer or punisher becomes an MO. Changing motivational operations usually involves satiation or deprivation. Had too much of it, or you've been craving it, didn't have enough of it. when you restrict access or times or activities, they may become more reinforcing. Conversely, when the environment is saturated with one item or activity, it may reduce unwanted behaviors by making the behavior consequences less reinforcing. So if I saturate an environment with a certain activity, I create saturation that in turn creates an ablative effect, which in turn creates that abolishing operation. There's no value, there's no desire, which will create that abolishing operation. So there's a lot of stuff happening in this slide. There's a lot of stuff happening in EO1. Like I said, the motivating operations. When you look at a four-term contingency, and according to some of our sources, they can go on and on and on and on. But that MO is important, and it sets the stage for the SD. And it sets the stage for the ABC. So the bit that helps me out with motivating operation is there is that magnitude of desire or undesire and helps me look for that cue that it's either there, it's not available. Motivating operations, they do play a huge part in what's going on. I always encourage everyone, and I probably will after tonight, watch the video on the YouTube channel from Shane Spiker. He does a fantastic job breaking down MOs and SDs. It's amazing. I always refer people that direction because it just really helps bring it all together. An example from BAS talked about allowing one student to the class and run a lap around a pre-designated area at any time may reduce elopement, such as leaving one seat or fidgeting. If students are running more, they're likely to want to sit and attend more. I'm not really sure about that, but we're going to go with this example states in this perfect ABA world example here. Changing SDs can involve removing ones that have been tended to trigger undesirable behavior, hence morphing the SD enough so that it no longer elicits the target behavior, or adding new discriminative stimuli to encourage other behaviors. What I kind of got out of that whole big example is we're trying to create satiation. He's just tired. We're going to let him run. We're going to let him get out of the seat. We're going to let him move around. We're going to give him a buffet of walking around, running around, which in turn creates satiation, which in turn creates an abolishing operation. It's just the value of running, it just goes down. It goes down huge. When I was doing this, I kept thinking about response deprivation theory. When you do something over and over and over and over and over again, and then you haven't done it for a while, that deprivation creates a desire to want to do that. So maybe in this situation that letting him run and not sit in this chair would also create that deprivation of wanting to sit and attend more. But hence, in this situation, it looks like they're trying to create satiation, which in turn creates that abolishing operation. All right, pulled from one of my slides, to kind of how I broke down MOs a while back. They're antecedents, obviously, because they come before the behavior. That's what makes them antecedents. In some cases, SDs are considered antecedents because they both occur before the behavior, because they cue that behavior. But nonetheless, antecedents that alter the value or strength of SDs and consequences, and that may alter the behavior as a result. So let's just look at what we just read. Antecedents alter the value, and they also can alter the behavior. So if the value is there, it's going to alter the behavior to do it. If the value isn't there, then there's probably going to be a decrease. So value and behavior altering are a huge part of motivating operations. The value altering effect may be an increase or a decrease, like I just said. So there may be a reinforcing or punishing effectiveness of something going on. I think food is probably the best example of satiation or deprivation. Why put tacos in here? Who doesn't love tacos? Actually, we had that tonight. For example, food deprivation makes food more potent as a reinforcer. You go without food for a long time, it's more likely to be a reinforcer. If you go without food for a long time and you're deprived, it also helps create the value of choosing a restaurant, choosing dinner, choosing lunch, choosing a snack. Because the more value food has, the more you're going to make better choices. Just when you're not hungry, don't you always have a hard time making a decision? Because you're not hungry. But when you are hungry and you want that food as a reinforcer, the value has gone up. And your behavior to seek that reinforcement also goes up. When food satiation makes food less potent as a reinforcer, so does less responding, and that decrease also. A lot of words happening there. Let's just stop and think for a second. If I do a Cheerio or a sliver of a Skittle or something after lunch, after a snack, after breakfast, food doesn't have the power of a reinforcer because we just ate. Now it's funny because a lot of kids in my preschools they'll do a cartwheel for a Cheerio or a Skittle. It's amazing. But when you had food and your stomach's full and you haven't been deprived and you've been satiated, it's not reinforcing. When you've had a late lunch, dinner's not as reinforcing because you've had it already. So I like the food example because it kind of brings it home a little bit with that value. The value altering, which in turn creates that behavior. The evocative effect and the abative effect. What kind of helps me with evocative and abative is E and A. E goes with establishing, A goes with abolishing. So evocative and establishing, abative and abolishing. So I can't talk. Evocative effect increases in behavior. You want something and you desire it, and so your behavior increases to achieve it. On the flip side, when you don't want something and you've had too much of it, there's an abative effect. What I'm still not the expert on this, but what's really kind of helped me out is on questions I've seen. I still haven't got them all right. I'm not the master guy yet. Is the effect happens before the SD is present, happens before all these things kick in. I'm just really hungry, which means the value of food goes up. I'm not very hungry, so the value of food has decreased, which creates that abative effect. Unconditioned motivating operations, UMOs and CMOs. I think we've all seen the CMOs. And what I've kind of learned in several of my study circles lately is be really careful. Like, for example, condition motivating operation for transitive. That tool isn't the answer. You know, everyone says, well, T is for tool. If I'm eating a hot dog, I need to have mustard. So the mustard is a CMO too. I got to have the mustard because it goes with the hot dog. Or I lost my keys and now I'm fixing to go drive somewhere and now my keys became the CMO too. And the keys didn't become anything. The motivating operation has increased. What the condition motivating operation in that example is, you now need your keys. You are going somewhere and you need your keys to get in your car. So the motivating operation of leaving or about to go somewhere or something, that event is making those keys more valuable, which in turn now you need those keys. That's what makes it that condition motivating operation for transitive. Just like the CMO the reflexive for a worsening or improving. You know, we always hang our hat on worsening. Well, the thunderstorm isn't the worsening condition. It's those dark clouds that creates that effect of, you know, in the past, I've always learned that dark clouds are going to give me rain, or bright sunshine's always going to give me the sun. So it's that motivating operation that leads up to it. And then, of course, with surrogate, I always think of pairing, classic pairing, which is kind of like the CMOT, but just that classic pairing. But I kept hearing some stuff about the CMO2. I just really want to kind of want to put that out there a little bit, if that makes any sense. Because I know we get so I'm talking about me, Patrick here. I get so hung up on the tool, I forget about why I need the tool, and that's my CMO. I get so hung up on this or that. Well, why am I needing that? Why am I set up for that? Then, of course, unconditioned motivating operation. There's no learning history. You know, no one taught you to be hungry. No one taught you to want certain things, food, shelter, warmth, and all those other things. So those are unconditioned. And then MOs maintain, increase, or decrease the effectiveness of consequences as reinforcers or punishers. And that's very true. They set up the stage. They decrease the effectiveness, and they create that value. This is a lot of stuff out of the gate. I found this, and I thought maybe I had something with my Cooper notes, because I didn't want to recreate the wheel on about everything. But I found this with Rogue, and it broke it down with, and I know there's a graph on some page in Cooper 2 or Cooper 3rd edition. I know there's some graph somewhere, or even behavior analysis for lasting change. But anyways, motivating operations, they must have value altering effects. There's a value of that consequence at the end, which also can have that behavior altering effect. So it's always going to have value altering, but it also can have behavior altering. They don't go together. You're always going to have value, but you can have behavior altering. A BDS question got me on this one, because every time I kept answering it, I put them both together, value and behavior altering. And then finally, I kind of realized it's always going to be value, but it can be behavior altering. And then when we look at the establishing and the abolishing operation, like we said earlier, we had that increase, then we had that decrease. And then the effect that comes with it is the increase in responding, which sets us up for the EO, and then the ablative effect, the decrease in responding, sets us up for the abolishing operation, because there's no value. We just don't want it. Am I going too fast? I know I say it's a lot. Too fast, too slow. MOs and SDs are not my thing yet. I haven't got it all the way down cold. So I'm trying to muddle through the best that I can. Okay. Just a lot of hot stuff. I also found this, and I thought this was kind of neat. The establishing operations, of course, we just said before, we have our motivating, we have our abolishing operation. I found this via Google, so I really didn't have a site. It was found through Quizlet. So that's why I don't have the site in the corner. The UMOs are behavior altering, function altering, and repertoire altering. I really wanted to post this because I took some questions the other day and I got my lunch ate on behavior altering, function altering, and repertoire altering. I was like, oh, I only heard of behavior altering. And well, function altering and repertoire altering are also there. Because when you start to think about it, it does make a lot of sense. My behavior changes because of satiation or deprivation. The value increases or decreases. The function changes. And of course, the repertoire alters. You know, I have more things or I do a thing a little bit differently. And of course, our CMOR, CMOS, and CMOT. Those are also important too, part of our motivating operations. I won't. Repertoire altering. I'm going to take a stab at it because I'm not 100% sure. I don't have my books with me. I'm in my little boy's room. But I'm guessing if it's behavior altering, like I said earlier, that value increases or decreases, which changes my behavior. I want to say that repertoire altering would be I change the way that I would do something. I would change the way that I need to do it to obtain it. That would be, if anybody knows a better example or a better way to explain it, please jump in. Like I said, this is not my cup of tea here, but I'm going with, I would think that with it being a motivating operation, your behavior changing, your repertoire would also add as well, or alter. I just thought the stimulus control was really, really cool, and I wanted to add some BLAC notes into it because, we do things and we learn through rules and we learn through consequences. When the rubber meets the road, those are two things that we learn by. And of course, Tasklist E breaks it down a little bit, breaks it down also. But rules tell us what we need to do, and we have that delayed reinforcement, that delayed consequence. And then learning through discovery, learning through consequences, it's more immediate. Like my brother put cinnamon in his nose, it burned. That was a punisher. So so he learned through discovery that's probably not the best thing to do. When Paula calls her boyfriend while he's at work and he doesn't seem to want to talk to her, but when she calls him in the evening and she always want to talk to him, now calling, looking at her phone and thinking about calling her boyfriend kind of turns into an S delta because reinforcement may or may not be available. He may be busy, he may not be busy, but Paula has learned through calling him that it's not always reinforced. So that sets the stage for antecedent stimuli can also be used to discourage behavior as well as encourage behavior. So that's where I think about, maybe kind of throwing that repertoire altering in there. I learned something that didn't quite work, so I'm going to do this behavior now, these set of actions, and I'm going to add that to my repertoire because it's going to help me out. Well-established SDs can promote behavior. An SDPs can also reduce responding. I wasn't sure if they're going stimulus change or they were going MOs, SDs, but I really thought the stimulus change stuff from the mayor was kind of cool to share. As long as behavior is tightly controlled by the discriminative stimulus and the motivating antecedents, we can kind of figure out what's fixing to happen. Of course, SDs increase, SDPs decrease. And we could always think of examples there. But those cues are tightly controlled with consequences thereafter. The policeman on the side of the road, he's really an S delta. Do you get pulled over every time? Or do you always get by, which would be reinforcement? So he's really an S delta. If you're always getting pulled over and the lights are always coming on, it's probably going to be an SD for punishment. But these things increase, decrease, or possibly simply supporting its continuation, which was otherwise seized. The effects of SD on behavior can be modified by different contexts. This is referred to as conditional discriminations. For example, if bad behavior causes a school closing, then the student may ignore a due date for a class project. I like that, modified context. We have this big thing due tomorrow for big thing going on at work tomorrow. Something happened at the job, we're not going into work. We don't have to worry about that night. When we were kids, we had snow days or whatever days, and we had big stuff due, and then the next day the school was closed. Well, there wasn't a lot of pressure to get it done because we didn't have school tomorrow. My main point is when it comes down to stimulus control is everywhere, and stimulus change happens just about everything that we do. So these cues are super important, and then which will set the tone later on in this task list for discrimination training, stimulus generalization, and response generalization. Excuse me. Because it appears that we're either under tight or loose stimulus control. Stimulus control, the relation between a stimulus and a response when the stimulus sets the occasion on which the response will likely have a consequence. Those consequences have really told us what's fixing to happen. Those SDs send us those cues because of the consequences. Remember, we learn through rules and we learn through discovery. We learn through rules and we learn through operant conditioning. So, like my dog for here, for example, actually, it's probably my tennis shoes and my socks. Because in the evening, if I grab my tennis shoes and my socks, before I even grab the leash, she knows that means we're going on a walk. The walk is reinforcing. So that leash or even my socks signal reinforcement for her is available. We have a white tub that you can't read it, but it says dog treats. I keep her medicine in there and her dog treats. Lately, she really has been jumping for joy because she's not big on the medicine. So maybe there's a little bit of an STP going on there because she knows that means now I'm going to get this medicine that in turn hurts my stomach. So there's also a little bit of a respondent conditioning as well as operant. But nonetheless, at one time, that container, and it still does, that means treats. So there's things that my dog has learned. There are certain cues because of the consequences that have been thereafter. You could think about things throughout your life that have set the that have been occasioned by consequence, and now you have paired those things together. The responding may then be called a discriminated operant, and behavior that is conditioned by an SD is said to be evoked by the SD that signals a likelihood of reinforcement. And yes, that dog in the picture is my dog. That's Gracie. She loves to go on walks. And this slide just kind of breaks down the SD for reinforcement and the S delta and the SDP a little bit more. I really thought it was kind of neat when I was studying this particular thing when it came to stimulus control that, your dog, when it has that fast tail, that tail is wagging, that usually means they're happy, and it's usually going to be reinforcing for you and the dog. When a dog shows their teeth and they're growling and they're snarling, more than likely it's punishing. My mother-in-law's dog, for example, whenever I leave the house, he jumps and tries to bite us when we leave. So walking toward the door and leaving is an SDP for all of us, or actually opening the door is an SDP for all of us. This little white dog is going to come and try to bite us because he always does. I've been conditioned. If he's busy with somebody, I run out the door. A little bit of avoidance happening here, a little bit of negative reinforcement. But nonetheless, his angriness, his teeth, he has bit me, so I know it's punishing. Now, if a dog doesn't always bite and they just show their teeth and they have that bluff, it could be an S delta because there may not be a reinforcer, but there may also be a punisher. That would kind of be like your stop sign. You could take a chance and run through it and get where you're going and be reinforced, or you could probably run through it and maybe you won't get reinforced and get pulled over. It's not so much a bad choice. It's just more likely reinforcement may not occur. It's not always available. It's withheld. All right, that's kind of a lot to dance through. That was a lot. But like I said before, I'm not an expert on the whole MOs, SDs. I hope I got through it the best that I could. I'm going to probably look up that repertoire altering a little bit deeper when I get done tonight, just so I have that going on, because I do want to go over that, touch back with you on that one, just so I feel that I have it. But I have seen it pop up on a mock question. It's the one I did yesterday. EO2 is discrimination training procedures. It basically kind of, for me, broke down into stimulus generalization, response generalization, and discrimination training itself. That's really that's kind of the angle I'm going here and where all these slides are going to come from. Discrimination training is kind of that tight stimulus control, in my opinion. These stimuli set the occasion and they evoke certain behaviors. There's a time component to it, but these cues always present that consequence that always seems to happen all the time. But also we've learned through discrimination training where some behaviors are appropriate and where some behaviors are not appropriate. I can go run on a track, but I probably shouldn't run in a classroom. We can go box in an octagon in a UFC fight, but I probably shouldn't box in a classroom or at the office. So we also need to discriminate so our clientele understand when an appropriate time to do this and when the inappropriate time. Kind of that Walmart behavior versus at-home behavior. School behavior versus home behavior. Can't tell you how many times, and I think we can say it to ourselves too, is, my kid acts a fool at home, but at school, he's a perfect little angel, or the flip side, because they know they can't act that certain way at school. But discrimination training involves restricting the range of stimuli that are designated to set the occasion for or evoke a given behavior. Oops, sorry. I saw some come in. Discrimination training's main purpose is coaching our clientele to recognize the critical stimulus features that differentiate from discriminative stimulus reinforcement or from S deltas. So we want our client to recognize when an SD is for reinforcement or when reinforcement's not available. That's what we want our kids to understand. And there's generalization happening there. We can do it here, we can do it here. Probably not a good idea to do it here. Matt growls like a dog, but the growling greed is not a problem. He can growl all he wants. It's fine. But Matt growls in his bedroom, that's okay. Matt could be a hoot owl. He could act like a bird. He could do whatever he wants in his bedroom. But if he goes to Walmart and he goes in public, that may not be an appropriate behavior. So now he's learning to discriminate the context in which that behavior is acceptable and which it's not. Kind of like, how we always get upset with our kids on those PlayStations. They act a fool behind those keyboards and headsets and all that. But then at school or at here, they're different. Well, they discriminated. They know that behind there, it still is unacceptable to me, but it's acceptable there, but it's not there. Because I could probably get an SDP out here in public. If I said these things I said over here, I'll be punished. Over here, I'll be reinforced. So we've learned through discrimination training when we get reinforcement and when we don't through cues. This is kind of a fun thing here. At least I thought it was kind of neat. BAS supervisor guide calls stimulus discrimination. SD stimuli, discriminative stimuli that have systematically preceded reinforcement versus S deltas. One learns to discriminate things, for example, that are green from things that are not given in this process by receiving information for saying green. I know it's a lot there, but the child in an example would learn he's reinforced for saying it's green. Yes, that's green, you bet. So he's that specific praise. That is green. Good job for saying it's green. Touch green, all that green. But when he says blue or he says yellow, and we can hear crickets, he starts to discriminate. That's the wrong answer. I'm not getting praise. I'm not getting reinforcement. That's probably green. So when our kids always say everything's yellow and they overgeneralize, everything's blue, either they're overgeneralizing or everything really is. It's just the color that they know. But we need to give them reinforcement so they can discriminate what it's really supposed to be and what it's not. So they don't get reinforcement there. We're not always right. Yeah, I'm trying to slow down a whole bunch more. That's why I added so much more than I haven't lately. I want to say past. Behaviors that are acceptable only under particular conditions, but not under others. Like I just said, you could probably go hit and wrestle in a ring, but it's probably not acceptable in school or classroom. Probably not really acceptable at work. You're probably going to have a problem. Running. You can't really run in the classroom. You don't really want to run in a house. But it is acceptable outside. It is acceptable on a track. So we need to discriminate through training which particular conditions are acceptable. Because that's probably the best word to say it. Because it truly is desirable or undesirable. I would say you would, because you do act different between your friends and your parents. If you act that specific way around your friends, it's reinforcing. You're going to laugh, have a good time. But if you say the same jokes or whatever your parents, there's probably an S delta. Your parents probably an S delta, because reinforcement may not be available. They may not find it as funny. They may not find it the way your friends did. So I do believe that. When a boy calls his girlfriend when he's 16 years old, his voice is different than when it's his mom. It's hey mom, it's hey mom, what's going on? I need this and this. And then the girl calls, it's hey. There's a big difference, because if he talks to his girlfriend a certain way, it's reinforcing. There's definitely some discrimination going on, because there's reinforcement. He may want his girlfriend to accept a date or whatever, versus his parents. Those things may not be acceptable. So I totally agree with that. Our little bit of matching law here, a little bit. Behavior goes and reinforcement flows. We follow the cues. Stimulus generalization. I think I spent a lot of time on this, mostly for myself, and hopefully others. We'll probably work on some stimulus generalization, maybe wrap up this, and then we'll kind of see where we're at time-wise. I don't want to take up your whole night, because like I said, this has a lot of stuff I didn't realize until I got done this morning. But stimulus generalization is based on common features. Everything's a cat. Everything's a puppy. Everything's grass. Everything's a car. Everything's something. They share some formal features, some common features. So everything is that. There's some overgeneralization happening, but nonetheless, all that's also happening. But nonetheless, let's kind of set the stage here a little bit. Stimulus generalization broadens the range of stimuli, or abbreviated SDs, objects, sounds, times, places, other people, and so on, sharing common properties that function to set the occasion for or evoke particular behaviors. The ability to generalize on the basis of common stimuli features plays a critical role in the lives of all individuals. We need to, go back to our stimulus classes. Our feature, our temporal, and there's a third one. I know I'm forgetting it. Is it functional? Someone in the chat box. Feature your stimulus classes. I know there's formal, which is feature, temporal, arbitrary. There it is, arbitrary. So yeah, they have those common features. That's what puts them in those stimulus classes. So as humans, we make use of our abilities to acquire and employ complex verbal repertoires to train our students and clientele to generalize or expand the range of circumstances under which emitting a given behavior is acceptable. Sorry if I jumped the gun on that one. I gotta look excited. That's kind of answer my own question there. For example, stop to red lights and go to green lights. You know, everyone puts stop with red and go with green. I kind of use that with my first then charts. We're going to go with green, and then we're going to do the red, and then we're going to stop. First, we're going to do this, then we're going to do this, but then we're going to stop when we're done. So I do use those colors because I know how we generalize those colors. Of course, yellow does have a lot of its own idea. Is it really go faster or is it really slow down? I guess that would be discriminating training right there. Stimulus discrimination. Because sometimes I'm in a hurry. I don't know, I'm just spitballing here. All right. As an example here, I have a cheetah and a kitten. They are both considered cats. They share a lot of formal similarities and features as well. And at the end, they're both cats. We could generalize and call them. We want to break it down some more. Yeah, we have that cheetah, and yeah, we have that kitten. In stimulus generalization, the individual responds in the presence of a new stimulus the same way as previously taught, having the same characteristics. So if I've always been around my dad, and my dad always wore a white shirt with a certain ball cap, and I go out and I see a new big man with a white shirt and the same ball cap, he's probably going to say dad. That's when I think sometimes we forget in classroom settings. At least I've kind of caught on to this now. I walk into a classroom and teachers will say, well, he calls me mama or he calls me auntie. Well, you share the same characteristics as that person. So he's generalizing. And certain generalization may be appropriate and others may not. Sometimes it's harmless, and sometimes it is harmful. Like the example I'm gonna have next slide, green plants. They're all plants, but one could be poison ivy and one could be a different kind of plant. I think I make that generalization when I mow my backyard and I weed eat. I don't know what poison ivy is. I just know it's a green plant. And I just know that I have plants in my backyard. Weeds in my backyard would be the stimulus generalization. And a green plant that's unwanted would be a weed. So when I weed eat, we knock them all out. Then I find out a week later, oh my gosh. So I do generalize that they're all weeds because they're all green plants that I don't want. In some cases, they depend on natural circumstances, such as common properties shared among them. Labeling cats if they both have those common features, but like the plants, they all share the green, they all share the leaves, they all share the height, they all share some common thing in my yard that I put them in the weed category. Then I want to share this one because this kind of helps me out. I know some people are like, oh, when I do think of the chart. When I look at stimulus generalization and I look at response generalization, that helps me break it down. It really does. When I think of stimulus generalization, I think of a bunch of stimuli and that one response. That one response is always the same. On the first example on the left, this is what I'm just telling you about. We got plants. They're both green. They both got leaves, but one's poison ivy. So one may be harmful, one may not. On the right side, they're all cars. They can all be vehicles. My personal pet peeve is SUVs are called trucks. They're SUVs. A truck to me has a bed, a tailgate, and all that stuff. But that's still a generalization. All those are under one umbrella. Overgeneralization it describes it inappropriate generalizations. All men are dad. All cars, no matter what they are, whether it's a truck, bus, or whatever, they're cars. So discriminating among stimuli appropriately is the opposite of overgeneralizing. Yeah, visuals really kind of bring it home, at least for me. I hope so for you guys. I love visuals. Response generalization, aka response induction. That's helped me out on a mock question. Response induction is super important because it helped me narrow down the answer one time. Because my choices were like response generalization, response induction, something else, and something else. And I was kind of able to narrow it down. But it's kind of looking for there's a lot of scenarios with this, and it gets really tricky, and it gets really kind of puzzled. But I always think of, you have a stimuli. It could also be a setting. It could also be a circumstance. And then our response is different. We have different responses. So if I see a tiger, and at the zoo, when I see the tiger, I'm okay because he's behind the fence. But if I see a tiger on the street, I'm going to probably run up a tree and hide from him. So my response is different, but the stimuli is the same. Seeing that tiger. Seeing a snake. I saw a question about this, and we really broke it down one night. A snake. If you see a snake at the zoo behind the glass, it's still kind of scary, but you're safe. At least you feel safe. Same stimuli, the snake, but you see it outside in your backyard on your front door while you're swimming, you jump through your skin. Oh my gosh, totally different response. So you have multiple responses, same stimuli. When you read the question, make sure, and I agree with Penny, be really, really careful. Don't just look for any behavior, any response. Really try to break it down. What is the stimuli? What is the setting or occurrence or situation? And then what are my responses that go with it? If I'm drying my hair, if drying my hair is the activity we're looking at, that could be your stimulus and all the different ways of drying your hair. If sweeping the yard or raking the leaves is my stimulus, is my task, what are the different ways of raking my leaves? So you have that response class element there, all those different things that lead to the same thing. So really try to break it down the best you can. That's really helped me out with response generalization and stimulus generalization. When we receive praise, we say it different ways. Praise is our stimulus, the different ways of saying good job, super job, well done, and so forth. Those are our different responses. Does this make any sense? Am I breaking it down? Go a little bit further? Because I feel really comfortable with this, and it took me forever to get here. I mean, forever. Literally forever to get here. Okay. It is a tricky subject. It really is. It really can be. All right. I'm going to squeeze in rule-governed behaviors. I know we're on only 3, But then when I call it night, and I probably pick up either tomorrow morning or afternoon, I'll have to do a poll on, ABA study group and so forth. And we'll just go from there. Because like I said, I could dissect this stuff forever. And it's not stuff that can just kind of go on by real fast. What really helps me with rule governed is what my professor at University of Arkansas helped me with. When I look at rule governed, I think of I learn through rules. I learn through instructions. There's a delayed consequence, but I learn through rules. Here's the rule. Here's what I have to do. That's what I need to do from now on. I learn through rules. Contingency based, I learn through discovery. I learn through consequences. Stove is hot. Don't touch it again. I learned not to walk over here because something's going to happen over here. I learned this is pleasant if I do this. We learn through these beautiful things that happen in our lives through discovery. But then we also learn through rules. This is what it's supposed to be, and it's how we do it. But rules need to be specific also. We do this, and this happens in turn. Instructions are designed to become SD. When you ask someone to turn out the lights, you hope to encourage compliance with this instruction by thanking the person who complied. I always think of not just thanking, but a specific praise at the end. Thank you for turning out the lights. I really appreciated that. I think I've gotten better at that myself in some aspects. Changing procedures, expectations, and rules allows for a reinforcement-rich environment to which instructions guide behavior. Isn't this the ultimate goal of every teacher in America? I just don't follow the rules. Well, some kids can't handle the consequences. We can do our 3, 4, or how many rules, but at the end of the day, can all of our kids handle delayed reinforcement, delayed consequences? It's tough. It's tough, especially our nonverbal kids and our kids who don't have a lot of verbal stuff in their repertoire. It's tough. It's really tough. Rule-governed behavior controlled by the description of a contingency without direct contact with that contingency or a delay between action and contact with the consequence. This is in contrast to contingency-based that's controlled and governed by the consequences and the current environment. A lot of words. The bottom box is how I look at it. Rules, we learn from rules, or we learn through discovery. Just that simple. The bottom box is not BAS. It's kind of a synopsis of my teacher. So look at some rule-governed behaviors. This is from a slide from work. Behaviors that are controlled by rules. Recently, we've had to wear masks because of COVID. Of course, we did have some signs. We did have some verbal response prompts, nonverbal in a way. And now people are loosening up, and I think starting to tighten up again. But no one had to tell you to put on a mask. You just did. Driving is probably another good one. When you wear your seatbelt, no one tells you to wear a seatbelt. Now, I'll wear mine when I got a seatbelt ticket. I don't want it again. But how many rules in the road do we follow? And there's a lot of delayed reinforcement. That's a lot of trust on the highway. That center line, they're not coming over. They're going to stay on their side. They're going to follow those rules, the rules of the road. They're going to follow the speed limits. They're going to follow the turn, lanes and so forth. There's a lot of decision making on the road that follows rules. And do we get reinforced making decisions in the road? Yeah, we do. We get there safe. Probably the best reinforcement of all. We get there safe and in one piece. But these are strong indicators of instructional control or rule-governed behavior. No immediate consequence for the behavior, and the reinforcement or punishment is longer than 30 seconds. You go to TJ Maxx and you're wearing a mask, no one's going to say good job that mask right away. More likely during the heat of COVID, just getting in would probably be a reinforcement. There's no immediate consequence for behavior when you follow rules. Now, our nonverbal repertoire are delayed, are, having some, issues with that immediate reinforcement, they're going to have some problem following rules right away because they need that immediate reinforcement. And then we can start building that tolerance training, or we can start delivering that delayed reinforcement to where they can handle those rules. Fun stuff, fun stuff. But I'm going to stop here at E04 because I could honestly go all night long. And I don't want to go all night long, so my wife wants to go on a walk. Like I said, when I started getting this thing done today, I knew how much that I had. So I'm going to stop at E04, and then tomorrow night, or not tomorrow night, it's Friday night. I'm not that dedicated. But
tomorrow's Thursday.
Tomorrow's Thursday. I keep thinking Friday. I don't know why I keep thinking.
I know.
But I know